This is WFYI News Now. It's February 7th, and I'm Abriana Herron. On today's show, a state house bill that aims to eliminate as many barriers as possible to assisted living for older Hoosiers. And career and technical education, what used to be called vocational ed, is getting a lot more popular in Indiana high schools.
So I'm not so worried about tests and paper stuff, but them getting the experience. I'm a growing young adult, I feel like.
Those stories coming up. But first, a bill headed to the House would ban the use of student IDs to verify a person's identity when voting. As Indiana Public Broadcasting's Brandon Smith reports, students at public colleges and universities in Indiana have been allowed to use their IDs when casting a ballot for about 2 decades.
Republicans pushing the bill have offered no evidence of any issues surrounding the use of student IDs for voting. Lawmakers like Senator Greg Good simply say that student IDs don't have the same rigor as other allowable forms of identification.
It was never intended to be used off campus.
But Democratic Senator J.D. Ford says Indiana's real crisis is its low voter turnout, which won't be helped by further restricting access to the polls.
Senate Bill 10 is not about securing elections. It's about choosing who gets to participate in those elections.
Indiana regularly has one of the worst voter turnout rates in the country. For Indiana Public Broadcasting, I'm Brandon Smith at the State House.
More than 10,000 Hoosiers are waiting for home and community-based services through Medicaid waivers, including those waiting to go into assisted living facilities. Indiana Public Broadcasting's Abigail Ruman reports a House committee approved a bill that aims to eliminate barriers to assisted living for older Hoosiers.
The bill does that in a number of ways. It would no longer allow the use of waitlists if the state has waiver slots available. It requires FSSA to apply for a new waiver that would separate assisted living from all other home and community-based services. And it requires FSSA to reimburse for services from the date of application rather than the date of approval. Jill Stott is the executive director of Silver Birch Living. She says the waitlist is more than just numbers. It's people in every community in Indiana.
It is the elderly who are caught in this limbo, waiting for a decision that could mean the difference between housing, a hot meal, or displacement and food insecurity.
An elder law attorney also says this legislation could save the state money in the long run, since assisted living is less expensive than institutional care. For Indiana Public Broadcasting, I'm Abigail Ruman.
The bill now heads to the House Ways and Means Committee. And for our final story today, career and technical education, what used to be called vocational ed, is getting a lot more popular in Indiana high schools. In the class of 2023, about 40% of students concentrated in areas like welding, healthcare, and business. From WFYI's education desk, Dylan Piers McCoy went to a rural high school that's embraced career education.
The shop class at Shoals High School used to be kind of a joke, an elective to fill some time. But 6 years ago, a new teacher was hired to begin full-fledged construction and agriculture programs. High schoolers built a barn and started a campus farm.
Just use 2 screws to strap it to this first.
Now, Shoals Shop is the heart of school for many students.
This class is amazing, probably my favorite class. I get to learn not only construction, but he also takes us out to the barn and we also get to see the animals, so
it's more hands-on work than just sitting in a classroom on a desk, and you're actually up doing something.
I like that we learn how to use new tools and techniques to build things and learning what harms the animals and what doesn't.
That was high schoolers Gage Gilbert, Mason Baugh, and Dixie Riggins.
Yep, just put a screw next to it.
The new classes are part of a district-wide commitment to career and technical education over the last several years. The rural high school now offers 11 career pathways, and nearly 80% of the Shoals class of 2023 concentrated in a career. While Shoals stands out, the district isn't alone. Schools across the state have ramped up career and technical education, known as CTE. The number of Indiana students taking classes in career pathways surged by nearly 16,000 over 5 years. Anthony Harrell is with the Indiana Commission for Higher Education.
We have seen tremendous growth in terms of the number of students that are participating in CTE courses, and the number of schools that are offering CTE courses. And a lot of that goes to some of the policies that have been established at the state level.
Harrell says changes to graduation requirements fueled interest in career and technical education. Indiana high schoolers used to take math and English exams to graduate. But under new state rules, students can now qualify for diplomas in other ways. The most popular one is to concentrate on a career path, essentially take 3 classes in a focus area. Those rules helped spur Shoals High School to embrace career and technical education.
The first thing we need cuts some 6-footers with the 2x6s we carried in yesterday.
Back in the construction class, Ben Kent is teaching his students to build tables.
The first couple weeks we built picnic tables and kind of found out where a lot of people's niche was. They all get to experience a little bit of it, but when we find the what works the best, then we've forged ahead with a lot of production.
Kent helped create the construction and agriculture programs in Shoals. He worked with students to build the barn and farm. Now they raise animals like pigs and chickens and grow vegetables, serving what they produce in the school cafeteria.
So I'm not so worried about tests and paper stuff, but them getting the experience. I'm growing young adults, I feel like.
For some students, Kent's classes are transformative. Braden is a junior at Shoals High School. We're only identifying him by his first name because this story involves sensitive information about him. Braden wasn't even enrolled in the construction class where I met him, but he got out of study hall to come to the workshop.
This is just like the perfect class for me. It's kind of just whatever we end up doing, whether it's working with metal, working on vehicles or the tractor, building picnic tables, shooting benches, the barn, pouring concrete.
The classes Braden takes with Kent are one of the only parts of the day that feel relevant for him. Braden tells me he thinks about quitting high school.
I want to make money. I'm thinking about doing the same thing most of everybody else in my family did. Drop out, go get a good job, get a GED. Same thing.
Why would you stay?
Kent's class, Kent's and welding. That's about it. I really have no other purpose here.
For students who don't plan to go to college, career and technical education can help them get better paying jobs straight out of high school. But career education is also supposed to help students who are planning to go to college. Take Shoals junior Alyssa Taylor. When she started high school, Alyssa wanted to be a veterinarian, so she chose to study healthcare and agriculture. Then she started classes.
Freshman year, we had to, pack a wound in the healthcare, and I was like, this makes me a little woozy. And then I was like, okay, maybe it'll be okay. And then I was like, it's not okay.
Alyssa no longer wants to be a vet. If she hadn't taken a healthcare class, Alyssa thinks she would have been in college before she figured that out. In Shoals, Indiana, I'm Dylan Pierce-McCoy.
This story was produced with support from the Higher Education Media Fellowship at the Institute for Citizens and Scholars. And that's all for today's episode of WFYI News Now. Our podcast is produced by Drew Daudelin and Zach Bundy, with support from the news team at WFYI and public media journalists across the state. Our news director is Sarah Neal-Estes. Kendall Antron produced our music, and I'm your host, Abriana Herron. If you like today's episode, remember to subscribe and share, and follow WFYI on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube to check in on our newsroom throughout the day. Thanks for listening. We'll be back on Monday.